Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. It's open season right now on Jarrell Big Pharmacy Miller after the American failed 3 doping tests in quick succession for 3 different banned substances, which would have given him an advantage if he had have fought Anthony Joshua on June 1st in New York. And fan backlash, as you might expect, has been swift, it's been brutal. Jarrell Miller has really been hung out to dry because of his own sheer stupidity. He really did have the winning lottery ticket, a fight worth millions to him. It's like the ticket that he had, he's just lit it on fire and it's gone up in smoke. Poof, it's gone. Jarrell Miller, through his own stupidity, in my view, has lost this opportunity because he tried to crib an unfair advantage to fight Anthony Joshua. Really, it's hard to look at it any other way. But there are some who feel that the backlash has been over the top. That fan sentiment is going too far. The backlash is too strong. What's being meted out to Miller is now unfair. That it sort of surpasses what he has actually done. And one of the people that is sort of pushing this barrow is Serafina, who is the VP of Greg Cohen Promotions. That is one of the outfits that co-promotes Jarrell Miller. She has gone so far as to say on social media, "It is hard for me not to think that he is being nailed to the cross by the public and media because he is an African American fighter." And yeah, for some that is really going to get up their nose. And this has been picked up by the general media. The BBC, I think, was the first to do so. And some people have really got their nose bent out of shape over that comment. And subsequently, Serafina has actually come out on her Instagram again, see her on screen. "My statement regarding race was taken out of context. Of course, he didn't test positive because he is African American. I felt that the backlash he was receiving was more than any other fighter." Not really sure if that explanation sort of explains away the first assertion that he was getting more backlash because he was an African American fighter. But that's by the by. We're going to talk about this in another light because it's not about race, this issue. I don't think most fans are looking at Miller and thinking, oh, well, because he's a black guy, he's going to get extra punishment here. And she noted in that other Instagram post, there were other guys like Luis Ortiz and Canelo Alvarez. Not too long ago, everyone's favorite Mexican signed a $365 million deal with DAZN after eating the tainted meat. Even the very fighter that was asked to replace Miller, Luis Ortiz, tested for banned substances on 2 separate occasions. But y'all must have forgot. So ahead of sort of launching into my thoughts on this and the backlash on Miller in general, because I really want to get warmed up into this and sort of unleash a little bit, what we're going to do is set the table here with the sad tale that is Jarrell Miller, Big Pharmacy Miller, failing these 3 different tests. We're going to go from woe to go, starting with the press conference in New York 2 months ago.
I hold my mouth long enough. I'm freaking home.
Man, you had the roaches, the rats, and the dirt. We was under the dirt. Roaches came before us. Cause they knew where them food was at. I work hard for this. Hard. You have no idea. Breathe, eat, sleep, Anthony Joshua. This is bigger than boxing, man. This is bigger than boxing. This is bigger than belts. This is bigger than AJ. This is bigger than me. It's bigger than the Masters Greg Harden.
He's an ex-kickboxer, drug abuser, punches like a fairy. Fury knocked him out 7 times, right?
He talking about drug abuser. What drug he talking about? We're talking about something in a pre-workout. This motherfucker has fucking use exemptions for testosterone, all kind of shit. Like, get out of here, B. Like, I've been doing my research on you. Who comes out of Olympics at 220 and go to 240 in a year? Like, get out of here, B. You sound like a dickhead. I know bodybuilders don't even put 20 pounds of muscle on a year. This is cheeseburgers, my cheeseburgers right here. It took me 7 years to put this weight on.
I'm gonna kill this motherfucker.
That's some bullshit. I said I want some food. They throw me a grapefruit, take my ass, go to bed.
messed up. I messed up. I made a bad call. A lot of ways to handle a situation. I handle it wrongly, and I'm paying the price for it. I missed out on a big opportunity, and I'm hurting on this side. My heart is bleeding right now. I hurt my family, my friends, my team, my supporters, but I'm gonna own up to it. I'm gonna deal with it. I'm gonna correct it, and I'm gonna come back better. And I'm humbled by the experience to understand, how to handle certain things, man. And I'm gonna leave it as that.
Cut Jarrell Miller in half and it'd just be a ranking disease.
The problem with some of the stuff with Jarrell Big Pharmacy Miller is, where do you start with this thing? Is it the hypocrisy, accusing another fighter of being on performance-enhancing drugs with no evidence, yet all the while he's doping himself? He is on multiple substances. Or do we start with his vehement denial after the first test, which evaporated after the second and third test came in quick succession? Because Jarrell Miller is not only a cheat, he's a liar. He put out that statement saying he had never knowingly taken any substances. He said he stood for integrity. He said a number of things in that statement which were patently not true. He said he would be vindicated. And then after the second test came out and the third test comes out, that denial, that very public denial, was taken down off his social media platforms and replaced with the statements from Miller himself that he had messed up, that he'd done some things and, he'd gone about it the wrong way and he was going to correct his actions, all that sort of stuff. It was some sort of half-hearted effort to sort of fall on his sword. But in the process, he didn't really apologize. All he did was just sort of say he'd messed up. Some of that may be careful words, but he proved himself that he was a liar. And the key difference, which we're going to get into with some of these other fighters, and make no mistake, I'm highly doubtful about some of these other explanations that pop up from fighters that failed tests, contaminated meat, blood pressure medication, all that sort of stuff. It does sound highly suspicious. But the thing in those cases is, were there multiple tests? But also, those guys, Canelo Alvarez and Luis Ortiz, the tainted meat, the blood pressure medication, no one's excusing that they've failed a test, and at the time, those guys were the subject of a huge amount of backlash. There was a number of memes made about Canelo especially, and he was banned. And people wanted him to be banned, and it didn't really sort of hold weight that what he'd done with the clenbuterol was actually something that was legitimate. And 6 months for many fans, it felt like it was very soft. And if people forgot, there was a huge amount of backlash to Canelo. But is boxing full of inequality when it comes to how the sanctioning bodies treat certain fighters? Of course it is, because you know what? Money talks in boxing, and within a day, the WBC was falling over itself to, make out that Canelo was innocent, and there was nothing to see here. Ultimately, though, he serves his time. But in that case, and as with the case of Luis Ortiz and the non-disclosed blood pressure medication, which, could have acted as a masking agent for something else, those two guys had their inbuilt excuses. There was one failed test on each occasion for those guys, and they were falling back on, well, I failed the test because of this reason. And had another test come out with something different and proven them to be liars, they would have been in the same position as Miller. Miller tried to do the same thing that they did, which was to fall back on an excuse and sort of say, I'm innocent, I haven't done anything, and there's, I'm going to clear my name. I am innocent, I've never knowingly taken any substances, which is, of course, what any athlete who fails a test, often says. But when the second test came, and then the third in quick succession, and that was quite the day, because I don't think fans could really believe 3 failed tests, in such a short amount of time, in the space of about 2 or 3 days, and 2 were announced with about 8 hours of each other. It really was a big shock for fans. And the fact that some of it was, EPO, at that point, because he has to inject that into his body, he cannot take that any other way. There was no room to move anymore for Jarrell Miller. And the fact that it was 3 failed tests, 3 different substances, proved it was systematic doping There was no opportunity for him to claim or feign ignorance or say he was innocent, because it was just so patently obvious he was a drug cheat. Jarrell Big Pharmacy Miller tried to get an advantage over Anthony Joshua through cheating. And then he tried to lie about it after the first failed test. But when it became clear that he couldn't lie about it anymore because he'd been caught with his hand in the cookie jar, he'd taken too many drugs, and he'd been caught out by the testers, he had to come clean. And even in coming clean, he couldn't really sort of say what we'd, like to hear. It was a pretty half-hearted sort of, act of contrition. So the situation with Jarrell Miller and Canelo Alvarez and Luis Ortiz, it is very different. It's similar, but it is different. If those guys had failed 3 tests as opposed to 1 test, fans would have been all over them. As it was, fans were all over them, especially Canelo, but not to the extent of Miller, because Miller has really gone beyond the pale here. It is systematic doping. He has tried to cheat so deliberately, and it's become so obvious. That is the reason why fans are getting into him so big. It's not about race. It's not about any sort of socio-economic issues. It's about the fact that he is just an obvious cheat. And he has been caught taking something like EPO that you can only inject. You cannot try to sort of say that that got into your food. Canelo and Ortiz, they had some, what on the surface appear to be flimsy excuses. But had other tests, failed for different substances, they would have been hung out to dry or nailed to the cross, as Serafina says, just like Jarrell Miller is right now. And Jarrell Miller's going to find it very hard to come back from this situation with fans because of what he's done. Some fans are willing to forgive someone if, they say sorry, it's one substance, but they've said they were innocent, and they, tried to hang it back on something. A lot of fans are willing to give a fight at the benefit of the doubt. Some fans, no, as soon as you fail a test, even if it's claimed to be pre-workout or was a paperwork issue or it was contaminated meat or whatever issue or excuse someone wants to come up with, one test, or if there's a big amount of time and someone does the time, because it is a strict liability system. If you fail a test for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. It's on you. You're responsible for what's in your body. And Miller, in this case, was responsible for putting these very potent substances in his body ahead of what would have been the biggest fight of his life in a combat sport where he's going to try punch someone else in the head and the body and trying to go in there with bad intent. And he was trying to be juiced up to the gills to try get a win over Anthony Joshua, knowing that the testers were coming, still thinking, I can get away with this. I'm going to go in there and get away with this. He only has himself to blame, and the criticism, it's completely justified. And I still can't get over some of these clowns and muppets who are trying to say that Joshua and Hearn have set Miller up here. I can't believe that. I mean, Miller has admitted that he's done this stuff. He's admitted that he's done this. It's categoric. It's nothing to do with Hearn or Joshua. It's on Miller 100%. And the sheer scale of what he's done is the reason fans are so upset and worked up about that. Not about race. It's not about anything else other than Jarrell Miller's actions. And his actions are so egregious. That's why fans are so unhappy with this clown. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.